What's going on, guys? Chansuke here. So it actually has been a while since I talked to you guys on the topic of tanks, and since they have gotten some changes in the few recent patches, I want to make a series of videos actually, where I give you guys some tips on how to become a better tank driver on the battlefield. And today we will be just focusing on the loadouts of the tanks and also talk about positioning and how that can affect you. If you haven't seen the original series of videos where I break down the tank's attachments in detail, I will have a link down below in the description linking you guys to that playlist, so if you want you can check that out later. I would like to think of myself at least experienced with the main battle tanks, because over the course of Battlefield 4 I have gotten almost 2,000 kills with them. I'm not the best tank driver around, but I think I'm at least in the top 10% of good tank drivers, I guess. Anyways, if you're just a beginner or just someone who have never ever played with the tanks before but wants to get into it now, the main thing before we even get started is to make sure your loadout is properly set up for your playstyle. Personally, in my loadout for the main battle tanks, I run the AP shell, which is the default original shell. For the secondary weapon, I use my trusty HMG. Now with countermeasure, I am running active protection. Optics, I have zoom optics, which again default is in the category. And lastly, for upgrades, I run reactive armor. Now this, in my opinion, is the best loadout for the main battle tanks, but I can see other people wanting to choose the Sabot shell instead of the AP shell. And in the very near future, I am planning to make a video comparing the 3 different tank shells with each other to see which one fits the best for your playstyle, so be sure to subscribe to my channel for that upcoming video. Now when you first start out, default you do have the LMG, which personally I'm not the biggest fan of, because for 2 reasons. One is because the gun overheats way too quickly and the reload / cooldown time just takes quite a while. 2 is because the LMG isn't just the best effective long range weapon, it's mostly a close quarters type of weapon. And again, going back to the first point, because it is a close quarters gun and because it overheats too quickly, often you will catch yourself in the middle of a reload / cooldown when an enemy just runs right in front of you. So that is why I like to stick with the HMG, because I want to be as far away from my enemies as I can when I shoot at them, and I like how you do much more damage per shot with the HMG compared to the LMG. Then I chose active protection because, in my opinion, this countermeasure is what saved me so many times. It could be the deciding factor of winning the tank battle or losing it. It's just very important for you to know how to effectively use this countermeasure, or else you could just be wasting it. But anyways, that is just another topic for another video. Zoom optics single-handedly could also be the most important attachment out there for any vehicle. I use zoom optics on all my vehicles, so the main battle tanks is no exception. It just really allows me to fire at enemy targets which are much further away from me. I went back to Battlefield 3 and just tried out the tanks without zoom optics, and holy shit, I just couldn't hit anything. It was just a much different experience with zoom optics and not having zoom optics. I would definitely recommend you to try to adapt to zoom optics if you haven't already, because it is the best tool you can have next to active protection. And lastly, I do run reactive armor because it just helps you not get immobilized, meaning you just don't turn into a sitting duck for an enemy tank and engineers to freely fire at you. As you may or may not know, being immobilized is just one of the worst things you can have as a tank driver. You're just heavily under fire and you can sometimes feel very helpless. So anyways, that is my preferred loadout, and now I am curious what you guys are running on your tanks. I'm sure it isn't going to be that much different, but just still leave your comments telling me your loadouts. Moving on, let's talk about how to position yourself as a tank correctly and safely. Where you place yourself on the battlefield could really just mean life or death. You kind of want to set yourself up in a position where you can shoot at the enemy targets but not expose yourself enough where they can heavily fire you back. This, of course, is said easier than done, and to try to achieve this, you really have to have a good sense of where the enemies are located, and most importantly where the tanks are, both your teams and the enemies. If possible, you kind of want to spot out the enemy tanks and keep them spotted, because that way you don't just have a tank randomly sneak right behind you and catching you off guard, easily killing you. Also, when you have an enemy tank spotted, at least maybe your team's tank will try to engage them, but what you really want to do is stick with your tanks, because 2 tanks are better than 1, meaning you have a much higher chance of living when you guys run into a tank battle. Now, when you're setting up yourself in the tank, you want to try to find a large piece of non-destructible cover next to you, like a giant rock, so that way you can use it to avoid RPGs and tank shells. This rock could really save you from that last RPG shot which blows you up, or you can just use it to hide behind it until the countermeasure or your weapons are fully reloaded and replenished. It is just very important when you're driving around, you are always looking for that piece of cover to hide behind, because at any moment a tank could just pop right in front of you, but at least you will be ready. And when you're finding that piece of cover, also look at the terrain. Is it on a hill or is there some sort of hole? Most of the time it will be flat land, but usually you don't want to put your tank on a slanted hill, because as you aim and fire you want to be completely still, but if you're on a slanted hill, chances are you will be slowly sliding down even after the patch which was supposed to fix this problem. Sometimes this could just make you miss that valuable shot, so just try to keep your tank on flat land. This just may be a lot of information to take in if you're new to this, but as you practice more and more with the tanks, you will gain a better knowledge of what to do at different situations. And I would say this guide is best practice and best suited for conquest, maybe rush, because rush sometimes has too many infantry which tries to gang up on the tank. So if you're new to this, just try to stick with conquest for a bit and you might get a hang of it, and as you get better and better, slowly transfer your skills to rush. It will slowly become a second nature to you, and you won't even have to think about all these factors, you just know what to do. Anyways, that about wraps up this video on how to become a better driver by properly setting up your loadout and positioning your tank correctly. I hope you guys enjoyed and have learned something from this video. Thanks for watching. Peace out, guys.